If you have a garden, big or small, I believe one of the first things you need to do is set your garden up on irrigation and a timer. The timer is obviously optional, but the irrigation is a must. It is such an easy task, and it's a one-time thing that will save you hours and hours of time in the future. Watering your plants is a no-brainer. You have to water for your plants to grow. But the problem with gardening is that when we have long days or really hot days when we just don't feel like going outside, the plants still have to get watered and we may not feel like doing it. And gardening should be fun and enjoyable. And when you have to water every day, that's when it can start getting overwhelming. So if you set your garden up so that it's automatically watered, it's one less task that you have to take care of. Plus, if you decide to go out of town or just have a long day and you don't have time to get to the watering, you don't have to worry about it. It's automatically taken care of. And so I'm going to walk through my garden and show you how I've set everything up on irrigation and drip lines and misters. And so no matter what day it is, my garden is being taken care of. And then it saves me time that I could take care of the weeds and the harvesting and all the other things that come along with gardening, and the watering is just always taken care of. Okay, so I'm going to start at the timer and then walk you through the garden. I have an orbit timer that has 4 different systems, and so you can have each line run for its own amount of time at a different start time. You can skip days, you can have one row just go one day a week, or you can have every row go every day, each at a different amount of time. So I really like these orbit timers that you can digitally set because there's so many options. You can also go with just a 2-system timer, which is great if you have a smaller garden. But for me, I have all the garden boxes and then I have these 4 long rows, so the 4-system timer works great. Okay, so as we leave the timer, I have each row on its own line, so then I can have its own start time and its own amount of time that it waters. For example, the tomatoes need to be watered longer than my peppers in this 3rd row. So I have the tomatoes set to go for a longer amount and the peppers go for a less amount of time. So it's really nice having that automatic timer that you can set all of that. And then at each row, I have a shut-off valve so that if I don't have anything planted in the row, I can just shut off the valve. You could also not have the row on the timer on, but if you have, for instance, 2 things on the same line, which this row of tomatoes and this row of tomatoes are on the same line, I can have one row shut off, but the other one will still get watered. Then as we look to each plant, I just have a 1/2-inch line and a shrubler pushed in there, and you can just open it up to let as much water out as you'd like, and you just stick it right in the line. I believe that's the easiest way, especially in a long row like this where everything is planted right along the hose. But if you have a plant that's away from the hose, then you can set it up with spaghetti line, and I will show you that in my gardening boxes. Okay, so now we'll go over how I have it set up for all of the gardening boxes. I just have one box that isn't currently set up, so we won't look at that. But I have the line that comes out of the timer, it cuts across, and I have it go to each box. So you can see right here, it goes to this box, and then I just have the T at the bottom, and then it goes up to an elbow, and then I have the shut-off valve, and then just the line that goes through the box. And at the end of the box, I have another T, and then I just clamp it shut at the end of each section. So each section has the clamp, and then the reason that I don't end it here at the T is that then I have the space to be able to hook up other lines to this hose. So for example, this hose right here has drippers every foot, and so I can just stick it right into the end of this hose. And if I don't have anything that needs this drip line, I can just put a stopper. I can pull this line out and just put a plug there, and then I don't have to worry about the water being dripped out. But it gives me the option of adding more to each box if needed. And then depending on what you have planted in each box will determine what type of watering you want. So over there where I showed you I had the drip line, I had green beans planted, and since they're planted close together, I wanted the dripping water every foot or 6 inches. So there's drip line that drips every 6 inches, every foot. It just depends on where you're buying your irrigation supplies from. And then out in the long rows, I have the tomato plants in a long row, so I just put the shrubler right into the main line. In this box, the plants are not planted along the main line, so I use spaghetti line that runs to a stake, and then the shrubler is right on top. I really like these ones because the water just flows out really evenly, kind of like a shower. And you can also use ones that mist. I prefer ones that just water right at the base of the plant. So I will go turn on this system just so you can see how the water flows out of this. Okay, so now that I have them turned on, I'll show you how they're watering. So it just comes out in a really nice pattern, kind of like a shower head or the shower attachment on a watering nozzle. But the thing I like is that it waters right at the base of the plant and it doesn't get your whole entire plant wet. If you use the ones that are the mister type, if it's windy, the wind kind of messes with them and it doesn't water that great, and then it gets your entire plant wet, and you don't need that. You just need the watering right at the base of the plant. So for the majority of my garden, I just have the main line and then the spaghetti line with the spigots that run to each plant. For depending on the plant, like I said, sometimes you want drip line. So along this lettuce, I have the drip line that runs. You can see it right here, and it drips out every 6 to 12 inches depending on the line that you buy. And it's great for things that are planted super close together, like lettuce or spinach, or even the green beans that are right over there. So your choice on what type of watering you want. But I really think the way I have it set up has worked really great, and it's just a one-time setup, and then you never really have to mess with it again. I always, of course, check to make sure everything's working, but as long as you're out in your garden about once a week and you kind of check on everything to make sure everything looks like it's been watered, it's usually always good to go once it's running well. I have had this set up for a few years now, and I haven't had to replace any of the main line. Once in a while, these little heads get clogged and I have to unclog them, but even that is pretty rare. So it's definitely an investment worth making, and it's really not a big investment either. I believe I got my entire garden set up with the initial materials for about $100, maybe even less, and that's including all of these long rows and all of these boxes. So it's really not very expensive, and the amount of time it saves is amazing. So I hope now you're convinced to set your garden up on irrigation. It is definitely one of the best things I've ever done for myself. It saves me so much time. It takes away the stress and overwhelm of watering, and my garden still thrives. And so set your garden up on irrigation today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them below, and be sure to check in the description where I will list out some of the parts you should look for and materials you'll need as you're going through this process. Have a great day.